So let's get right into the orphanage. Basically, in a nutshell, the word orphanage, the root of that is O-R-P-H, a word picture for the O is basically a picture for an eye, okay? R is a word picture for a head or the head of a man. And PH is basically a mouth. Is in Greek, it's Omicron, Rho, and Phi. Or in ancient Hebrew or Paleo Hebrew or Phoenician, it would be Ayin, Resh, and Pe, or Fe, depending on how you'd like to say it. In order, eye, head, and mouth. This creates a word picture for an oracle or a prophet or a prophetess. Somebody who can look forward, who has a vision in their mind, and then they speak the vision. Just to end the rest of the word, orphanage, the A-N means heaven in ancient Sumerian. So basically it means place of a prophet of heaven or place of an oracle from above. Place of those who receive oracles from above. Now, many of you might have come across the Oracle of Delphi. And the thing about the Oracle of Delphi, it was always a young virgin. It was always a young little girl, usually preteen, somewhere around there, and they would basically give oracles from the gods, and they would let the people know what the will of the gods was, or if they would have a vision or a prophecy. It was a succession. It was something that it wasn't just one particular person, but they continuously put an oracle in that position time after time. A young girl, a maiden, a virgin, and she was taken away from her family, and she would live in an orphanage. It was a place for young women who were being developed in order to become prophetesses or seers, oracles basically, right? That's where we're starting the movie. I feel like this is really important. The movie is also giving us a heads up for things that are to come here in our realm. The movie starts off with a little girl, a young virgin who lives in the orphanage, and she's going to be taken away by this godlike being, by this giant. So basically this movie is going to be about this little oracle, this speaker for the gods, and her interaction with the giants and titans, aka the gods themselves. At the very beginning of the movie, this little girl, this oracle girl, she opens up the window and there are these drunks that are just stumbling through the alley. Now, something notable, like I said, they don't put anything in the movies on accident. It all represents something. Now, these drunks, they stumble through. There just happens to be a big puddle of water right there in the middle of the street. And this one drunk in the middle, he stumbles right through the water, not knowing what's happening. And the other ones freak out. They're like, oh, get out of the water. That stuff will kill you, man. You know, and it's just real subtle. This is symbolic of something that we're going to get into here in a bit about why the bad guys always seem to be afraid of water, or water is a tool that is used in many movies and television shows to kill the bad guys or to get rid of the bad guys. But we're going to circle around back to the water here in a bit. Just keep that in mind. They put this at the very beginning of the movie, that these bad guy drunks are walking through the street and they say, that stuff will kill you, get out of the water, you know, for no reason. They didn't have to have that in the movie, but it's an important piece. Now, another one of these is she goes up to the clock for no good reason. It's not explained in the movie, and she sets the clock forward, right? In the next image, you can actually see that she sets the clock forward. It doesn't say that the clock was off. It doesn't say the clock was wrong, but she goes and she pushes time forward. Now, remember, we're dealing with an oracle who lives in the orphanage, who is just like one of the oracles of Delphi. And by the way, just as a side note, the original name for Delphi is Pythos. You might recognize the word Pythos from the word Python. It literally means snake or serpent. The oracle of the serpent, the oracle of the snake, is the oracle of Delphi. So this little girl, the oracle, she also goes in and she sets time forward as a clue to the watcher. This is a huge clue. We're going to be focusing on future events. Now keep that in mind as we roll forward. Oh, another thing, talking about skipping ahead and the movie dropping these clues that we're going to be referencing future things that will happen in the future. We've got the Oracle of Delphi, this little girl in the orphanage. She sets the clock forward, and then she lays down to read this book. As you can see right there in the middle, her bookmark, she's reading ahead in the story, right? She's reading ahead from where her bookmark is. It's another subtle clue that we're given to say, hey, this is going to be talking about future events. So keep that in mind as we roll forward. Now, the giant comes to her window, right? And she starts becoming terrified and afraid. So what she immediately does, when her reality clashes with something that she has been taught should not exist, or she should not speak about, or is something of the fantastic, she says, never look behind the curtain, never go to the window. And she starts regurgitating what she's been conditioned to think about what's happening, right? She's literally reciting a sort of mantra of conditioning that we have all gone through in our world today. And she says, never look behind the curtain. Now, that's an interesting statement that they chose to put into the script. Never look behind the curtain, right? If you remember watching The Wizard of Oz, which also has a character that was afraid of water. The Wizard of Oz, who was supposed to be so scary and everything, he worked behind the curtain. And he says, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, right? Sophie, the girl here, which is actually really interesting now I think about it. Sophie, her name is short for Sophia, which means wisdom. So there's some even deeper connections to the esoteric in this as well. Because in some of the Gnostic teachings, it actually talks about in the beginnings of things, there were these giants, there were these titanic beings, and they went chasing after wisdom or Sophia, this energy, and Sophia, the energy, hid from the giants. So there's that as well. So let's move forward. She meets the big friendly giant. Now, the first thing you notice about him is he has ridiculously large ears, right? And you might just think, oh, well, they just put that in there just to make it look child-friendly and goofy. Absolutely not. The elven race was real and is real today. And one of the attributes of the silica race or silica beings that I refer to as the elven race, see my other videos about that, please, for more information, is their large ears that they have. Typically sort of pointy ears. You can see his are kind of pointy, but that's something that made the elven race stand out, is they had these large or elongated sort of pointy ears. And now the big friendly giant, by the way, he's a small giant. Jessica Lynn just funded $10. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate you. So he's got these huge pointy ears. What it means is he represents the giant class, the elven race, the silica race of giant beings that warred against the Titan race, right? Now remember, we have two different races a long time ago that pre-existed humanity. We've got the giants, also known as the gods. They go by many other names as well. But then we have the Titans, right? Both are gigantic and titanic in comparison to us. But the big friendly giant in the movie, he's a smaller giant. He represents the god race that were giants in comparison to us, but they fought even larger beings called the Titans, which we're going to get into, the movie gets into also. Now, she's taken to giant country, right? Now, when she goes into giant country, she starts to have this dream. As you can see, she's right here above my head, and she's running over towards, right around this hill. So you see this hill, that's just this grassy looking gigantic hill, right? But it turns out that it's not just a hill, but within this hill, within this mountain, there exists a giant, a sleeping giant, and it reaches out to grab her, to eat her, etc., and so on. Now this is also symbolic because there are mountain ranges across the world that are referred to as the sleeping giant, and they go by many different names. You see, the legends all say that these giants became a part of the earth itself. Something happened a long time ago, and the giants, when they died off, they petrified, turned into rock and stone, and they became much of the landscape that we see today. The movie reflects this concept. Okay, so here you can see right above me, this is one of the giants that represents the Titan race, right? The huge brutes that warred against the little guys over there. There's the big friendly giant. He doesn't look too big in comparison to this huge titanic giant that he's arguing with in the movie. It's also interesting to note that they decided to give the leader of these titans this brilliant red or orangish hair color, which may be an attribute that was passed on to humanity genetically. And so some people who have, we would call, what do they call them? We call them, I forgot, but the red-headed people, right? They basically carry a gene from the Titans themselves, right? Many of these giants were recorded as having this flaming red hair. Typically, it was either very blonde, white, or red hair. So in this particular clip, what's happening is the giant BFG, right? He's trying to scare away the Titan. And he says, oh, let me just get some water for you. And the Titan goes, no, 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 no water, no water, you know, because he's afraid of the water. Can you imagine that? A being that large, so strong and muscular, just being terrified of water. We're going to get into that here in just a bit as well. As they're arguing, the Titan, he starts to reach for one of these vegetables. It kind of looks like a cucumber, but it's got Sophie inside of it because she's hiding because the Titan wants to eat her, right? Now, that's another thing I should probably mention. The Titans in this movie, they eat human beings, right? Now, the big friendly giant clearly does not eat human beings, right? He's more of a vegetarian, which is also right in line with the tales, the myths and legend and the tales of the elven race or the fairy race or whatever, you know, there's various names for them, the giant race, those of Atlantis, etc. They were, in essence, vegetarians, you know. Eating meat was not a huge thing on their list. They respected the animal life and lived in harmony with it. Now that harmony turned into disharmony when the Titans themselves began to eat the living beings, right? Not just humans, but also animals and all of life on our realm. And the reason for that is probably because they also terraformed our world. They destroyed the world, essentially. They shaped it. They cut it down. Much of our world was a garden paradise. It was literally a gigantic garden that had huge mushrooms growing everywhere and all kinds of plant life. But as they tore everything down, as they shaped the world and dug out the areas that we now call oceans, and you know, created caverns and cliffs and all these strange geographic phenomena that we see, they also took away a lot of the food that had been growing. So they decided to go ahead and start eating the animal and people as well. Now, he's about to try a bite of this large cucumber-looking vegetables, and BFG goes, no, 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 because he sees Sophie's inside of it, right? And he says, I hate vegetables, right? He even calls them vegetables. He's so against eating plant life, right? Fruits and vegetables, that he's disgusted by it. He throws it on the ground and freaks out. So we're going to move forward to the next slide here. So Sophie and BFG decide that they want to go to this sort of dream country, right? In order to get to dream country, they have to go right past all those sleeping giants, just like it says right there. Now, this is another reference to the sleeping giants, the dead giants, basically the dead titans that once existed. Cataclysm befell our world, right? Our world was destroyed and torn apart, and when all of these beings died in this cataclysm, something had happened and turned them into stone. They became the mountains. They became our geography, and they had, you know, life growing off of them. Grass and trees and all kinds of things. This is known as, more commonly known as, mud fossil theory. And I have a lot of videos on that as well. So if you're curious about how the Titans died off in this ancient cataclysm and then became a part of the geography that we are used to, that we take for granted, we drive right past all of these sleeping giants all of the time, but we don't pay it any mind because the thought had never come to our mind that we could conceive that those were actually beings that once existed. You know, when we look at a mountain range, that's what we see. We label it mountain range. That's what that is. Don't ask questions about it. Don't get into how did it come to be? Where did it come from? You know, but those are things we're going to be focusing on, as well as I've got some other videos about that too. So they need to go past all of these sleeping giants that have the grass all up over them. Now remember, to BFG, it just looks like there's a bunch of giants laying there with grass on them. But to Sophie, it looks like she needs to traverse a hilly landscape, a landscape filled with hills. Now, just to give you an example, right, we've got various places in our realm, and I'm sure that in your area of the world, you have some interesting places too. Especially when it comes to the geography and what it looks like. So much of our geography cannot be explained away or passed off as the product of millions of years of wind and rain shaping and sculpting, you know, things like what you see here. This is actually in Yangshuo, China, right? And I believe that this plays an important part of the movie as well. But look at that landscape, you know? Does that look like anything? You know, if it was wind and rain, then where did the rest of the landscape go? You know, it would still fill up. Even if it was eroding, all of the erosion would still be there. It would just be rubble everywhere. It would be dirt all over the place, just as high as it once was, but it would be rubble and dirt, you know? But look at this landscape, you know? And we have these types of landscapes all across the world. The problem is we're locked into these cities. We're locked into these populated areas where they want to confine us and keep us, you know, living in square boxes that we call houses instead of being out in nature. You know, something like this, as realistic of a place as this is such a real place in China, and there are many places like this. This looks like a fantasy world to us, and this is the world of BFG. Now, I'm going to get into where Giant Country is a little bit towards the end of the video. We'll examine exactly where Giant Country is because it's laid out for us in the movie. But I did want to show you some of those pictures. Now, here's another breadcrumb that we see in the movie. This is Giant Country, and as you can see, the Titans are right there in the middle. Look at the strange rock formation that they decided to put into the movie. Why? You know, why would they put that particular rock formation front and center? It's almost like it's a character all on its own, and I feel like that plays an important part. So, because I started picking up that this movie is conveying truths to us about a hidden history, and not just a hidden history, but a hidden geography. You know, we're not very familiar with the world that we live in. You know, we're familiar with our own little neighborhoods, our own little areas, but so many other places in the world seem so foreign to us. And that's why I'd like to bring up some pictures here. Look at this rock formation, and now look at this one. This is a real place. This is a place that literally exists. And it's basically, if you go from the UK up towards Greenland, there is an island that has this particular rock structure on it as well. Here's some more pictures. Now, you can see this cliff, this huge mountain in the background. You know, wind and rain did not make that. Sorry. Titans made that. The giants who came before humanity made that. And whenever you say that, if you accept as a given that Titans once lived and they grew a maximum of, you know, a mile or two tall, and giants, you know, were way bigger than we are today, then all of a sudden shaping out the earth in shapes like that seems a lot more conceivable than what we're taught about how and where our world came from. So this is a real place, and I believe that the people who made BFG, who are dropping these clues and breadcrumbs to us, that they know about these places and that they are leaving it here for us to find so that maybe we can actually find out where Giant Country is. Now I'm going to show you a map here in a little bit as well. Let me go ahead and bring this picture down so you can see it better. So there's the same exact rock formation that you see in the movie right there. All right, so let's move forward. Keep that in mind. The movie is not 100% fictional or false or made up, but the movie and many movies contain these truths within them. You see, the problem is we're so conditioned. We've been conditioned to be like robots, you know, to be cut off and desensitized from all of the rest of the world. So something like this, most people never would have thought that this could actually be a real place. Turns out that it is. Let's go ahead and move these pictures up and we're going to move forward. Now let's talk about the Titans being afraid of the water. Now, keep in mind, it's not just the Titans that were afraid of the water. And I'm going to tell you exactly why they're always being portrayed as being afraid of the water. It's not just the Titans, but it's the bad guys, right? It's the bad guys in the movies, in television, etc. The bad ones are always portrayed as being afraid of water. For example, the Wicked Witch of the West, right? You throw water on her, she dies. You've got Dark City. In the movie Dark City, one of the main characters, he likes to hang out in the swimming pool because these pasty white-skinned aliens, like they're terrified of the water for some strange reason. Same thing in the movie Signs. These aliens come down, and the thing that kills the aliens is just simple water, you know? There's a reason for this. So in the movie, the Titans are basically picking on BFG, and he tries to distract them, and he says, look at the puffers, you know, look at the clouds, basically saying it's about to rain. So then what do the Titans do? I will show you. They start crying like a bunch of babies. Why is this is not explained in the movie? That's important. When you have a scene like this, where you've got something that just doesn't really make any sense whatsoever, and it's completely ignored, it's 100% unexplained in the movie, there's probably something behind it. There's some truth to it. Now, what happens is it starts to rain on these Titans, and they start crying like a bunch of babies. They run around, they go hide, and, you know, this guy's hiding in a cave, and he's looking at the clouds and the rain and everything. This particular Titan gets a little human-sized umbrella, you know, sort of as a joke, and he tries to hide from the rain under the umbrella. Look at the ears on this guy. Like I said, the Titans and Giants, they represent the Silica race. Back in an age where the beings that dominated our world were not, they were not organic in the same way that we are. They were not carbon-based, but silica-based beings, which is absolutely 100% possible and highly probable, which I talk about that in some of my other videos. This is why I refer to them as the elven race, or the El, the ancient god race, the Elohim, the Al, or Allah, the Alf, the Alvins, etc. They are the elven race, and that is exactly why they decided to give these giants gigantic pointed ears. And they're also terrified of water. So, okay, before I get into that, let me just tell you why they're so afraid of water. You see, this cataclysm that had struck our world goes through periods of cataclysm, believe it or not, and like it or not, okay? It's the law of cycles. Things happen and repeat all of the time. The pendulum swings one way and it swings right back the other way. A part of that pendulum swinging is an epic or an era of paradise, of bliss, of utopia and euphoria, of good times, where time itself slows down so that we can enjoy, you know, our time in paradise. But then as the pendulum swings down, it goes faster and faster, time speeds up. And then we eventually hit rock bottom, where we experience some sort of cataclysm, which is nature's way of washing everything clean. Things get so out of hand, things fall apart, they descend. Every religion, every culture has this understanding that that's how time works. It starts off paradise, and then it swings down into destruction or cataclysm, and out of that cataclysm, out of that destruction, is born something new. Something new grows out of it and takes us back into the area or the age of perfection, of paradise, of the Garden of Eden, if you will. Now, the cataclysm that had last struck us was what they call the flood, which is going to be my next video. Keep your eyes out for that. But it was this worldwide flood, the sinking of Atlantis, Lemuria, Noah's Ark, Deucalion. Every single religion and culture in the world talks about how it's a fact this world was flooded. As a part of the flooding, the reason why it was flooded is to destroy the quote-unquote bad guys. It was to destroy the Titans. It was to destroy the giants who had lost their way and sided, and there was all these factions and everything. But essentially, the bad guys died in this worldwide cataclysm known as the flood. So this is why it is symbolic in all of these movies that the bad guys are always afraid of water, because it's a breadcrumb to a forgotten past. It's a breadcrumb sort of reminding us, that this is the reason why the bad guys are afraid of water. Now, we have erected our own symbols of this, which are very popular. I'll get to that towards the very end of the video. Let's go ahead and move forward. So here's another example. There's a lot of movie examples, but this one I just happened to pull up. It's the Smurfs movie. Now, in the Smurfs movie, if you haven't seen my Smurf video, please do, because it absolutely talks about and confirms how there is reality hidden within what we call fantasy, and the Smurfs are no exception. Gargamel, you can see him way back there in the back. Gargamel is drowning at one point in this movie. He can't swim, and he says, "Help, I'm sinking. I'm afraid of turtles." And it's supposed to be this entertaining and amusing thing, He says, "I'm afraid of turtles. Haha, how ridiculous, But the reality behind what's happening is that the silica race of beings, the blue gods, if you will, they escape. Many of them escape. The ones who decided to flood the world, they retreated, they escaped. They went to safe places to wait out this flood. The Titans, like Gargamel back there, and like our friends, the Titans, they all drowned. And these movies, they talk about this. Bradley Truckenbrod just funded $15. Thanks, Bradley. I appreciate you. Remember to stick around after the video for the after chat as well, so that I can talk to everyone personally. So let's move forward. I just wanted to give you that little breadcrumb of truth right there from the Smurfs. Now, I want to talk to you. We're going to compare BFG to Moana for just a moment here, because the next thing that happens in the movie is that BFG goes up and he goes into the dream world, right? He goes into this otherworldly type place. And it's sort of portrayed in the movie as a paradise world, as a world of perfection and bliss. Now, I freeze framed the movie right here, because on one side you can see everything's very clear. You can make out the world that he's leaving. But before he goes into the dream world, there is this fog everywhere. There is this mist. And this is also another thing, a breadcrumb, that is reflected in many different movies. And I'll give you some examples here. I believe I just skipped one of the examples, which is Moana. But I've got another picture of that. Now, here's another picture of BFG. He's going into giant country, right? He jumps into the clouds. These places are always hidden from us in the movies, and they show that you have to transition between one realm, which is what we call Earth, our realm that we're familiar with, and transfer over into this otherworldly type place, right? Here's a clip from Kong Skull Island. Now, I don't know if you've seen Kong Skull Island. I'm not going to give too much away, but basically there is this mythic island where King Kong and all these gigantic creatures live, right? Skull Island is in itself symbolic of our hidden past, where we lived in a garden paradise. Our world everything was gigantic in our world. And I don't mean big, I mean titanic. Like if you were to time travel right now and instantly appear in the world as it once was during the golden age, the age of the giants and the titans and the gods, etc., your mind would be blown away. You would think that you entered into a movie itself. You have to use your imagination in order to even conceive of what life was actually and really like back then. So, in Kong Skull Island, this mythical land where everything is gigantic and titanic, which harkens back to our hidden history and our past, it's also hidden by a gigantic cloud, by a perpetual storm. But all of the people have to go through the clouds in order to get there, right? They have to go through all of this. Now, here's another movie clip from Wonder Woman. In Wonder Woman, if you don't know, Wonder Woman is one of the Amazons, which are basically the female gods that once existed. They lived hand in hand with the Azir or the Vanir. They had their own area. They had their own, they kind of separated out the males from the females, and that's where Wonder Woman comes into play. And that's why her island is full of the females, because that's where the female goddesses lived. And that area where the gods lived was hidden. It was, you can't see it. Here's another clip in the movie. This is what it looks like before the humans find the island of the Amazons. It's all shrouded, and it's very, it's got this sort of fog. And then when you go through, when you cross that threshold, I believe I've got a picture of it here. Well, anyway, we'll come back to it. But when you cross the threshold, then you enter into this other world. There's the picture right there, right? So you go from this foggy kind of place to this beautiful paradise place, an otherworldly place. The same theme is carried on over and over throughout so many different movies, where there is this land that is right here in our realm that is accessible. That's the thing. It is accessible, but it's hidden from us. Here's a clip from Moana. Before Moana goes to the island of Te Fiti, which, by the way, Te Fiti just happens to be a titan that turns into an island. She literally turns into a mountain range. Excuse me. She also goes through this fog, before she can get to this mythical type island place. Here's a picture of Maui in the movie. They're going through the fog. And then here's when they actually arrive. The fog is behind Moana. And let's go ahead and move forward from that. Basically, these areas are hidden from us. They're off limits, but people can get there. And there have been many stories of human beings arriving into this mythical-like land or country of the giants. So when they finally arrive in Dream Country, something that's interesting is BFG says that he can hear the stars. He can listen to them, that they speak to him, that he can hear the insects, he can hear the animals. And he says all of the secret whisperings of the world, he picks up on these things. What this is saying is that the elven race, or the god race, the giant race, it's not that they had really excellent hearing because their ears were so big, but what it's saying is that they were in tune with the world around them. There was something happening in that ancient paradise world that we have fallen from, where every being that lived was in tune. They were at one with the world around them, okay? There was an energy, whether it be ether or an energy or a vibration or a dimensional state. They were more connected and less separated than we are today. And he even says he talks to the trees in the movie, and, there are people that have jumped into the rabbit hole of truth, not of conspiracy, but of truth. Dive into that rabbit hole of truth, and they find themselves walking around barefoot on the ground and putting their hand on a tree and being able to pick up on its energy. This is something that used to be known, right? We are cut off from everything else. We live in a world and a mentality of separation. But back then, in the land of the giants, they were more connected. But their world started to fall apart as well. As you can see, the Titans became very disconnected. Now, they finally get to this dream tree. Now, I want to point this out because there is some symbolism happening here. There is the as above, so below symbolism. But even more important, or more interesting to me, is we've got this sort of world tree, right? I don't know how familiar you are with the concept of a world tree, but many cultures across the world have this concept that a long time ago, there were giant trees. I mean, huge trees. Like I said, our world was once a sylvan garden forest paradise with huge trees that shot up past the clouds. And legend has it that the biggest and tallest of all of these trees is the world tree that the myths all say lies at the North Pole. Now, I'll just talk about the North Pole for a moment because there's some symbolism going on here. The North Pole is famous for the northern lights, that emerald green magical glow that you see represented by magic in so many movies and television shows. This is no exception. We're shown, and I'm going to show you the northern lights here, but we have this sort of symbolism of the world tree. Also, in the as above, so below, we have this lake, right? Now, if you look at the picture, the lake on the bottom is a little bit different. It's got all these sort of fairy looking things inside of it, right? What happens is, in order to get into the dream world, they have to go through this water portal. This is very important. And for more information on water portals, please go check out my water portal theory video. But in a nutshell, this is something that exists in our world. There are realms above and below us, and those realms are separated by water. We travel through the looking glass, through the reflection that's on the water to arrive into another world. But before we go into that world, we have to come face to face with ourselves, because we don't want to go into another world polluting it with all of our ego and our self-centeredness and our hatred and our, things, our materialism, things like that. So that's where the whole the coming face to face with the mirror symbol comes into play. It's a metaphor. That's the whole reason why the bad gods, the vampires, they have no reflection. They have not faced the mirror. They don't want to come face to face with themselves. They enjoy living in this dense, this sort of dense polarity and this vibrational state. It's more of a thick, swampy kind of vibrational state. And it's okay. Like, they have decided, I'm going to remain in this. I'm going to cut myself off from examining myself and getting to know myself, which is one of the older axioms, to know thyself. Anyhow, going forward, Sophie and her giant buddy, they have to jump into the water in order to arrive upside down. That's another important one. There is an upside down world. It's an upside down place compared to us. Actually, in reality, we probably live in the upside down. I'm sure most of you can agree the world has really fallen apart, and it's not the best place to live, at least when we look back at our hidden past, right? We once lived in a beautiful garden paradise, wonderful, euphoric world. It's not so much anymore. There are beautiful places, don't get me wrong, but we might be the upside down. So anyhow, they jump into the water, right? So this is an image of Sophie right above me here. And she's looking down into the water, not at a reflection of BFG, but at him himself. He jumped into the water and came up on the other side. It's a water portal. And water portals are shown to us in the movies all of the time. I've done a few videos about it, but if you've checked out Warcraft, like the movie Warcraft, there are these orcs, which are basically the dark elves, the elven race, and they go through this water portal. And there's so many water portals, Stargate, all these different water portals in the movie. They're reflecting a nugget of truth, that there are portals that take us to other worlds, and they are watery. We pass through the waters to get into these other worlds. Same thing with the new Peter Pan movie, to get to Neverland, they actually go through another ocean that's out there in space in the movie, and they pop up through the ocean, they come into another world. Or Pirates of the Caribbean, whenever the sun sets, there's this emerald green flash, and it's always that emerald green kind of color. You go through the waters, there is this emerald green colored magic, and these are all the symbols that show you when you're on the right track. And I can't really stress that enough. When you're on the right track, as far as exposing the esoteric, finding out the truth, right, and working on yourself as well, you'll start to see all of these same and similar images and symbols all over the place. It means that you're on the right track. All right, so here's a picture. That bright light way up there, right above me, is the northern lights in the movie. The northern lights, they sort of glisten off of the leaf, and then the leaf drips out these dreams, right? So it's correlating the northern lights, or the North Pole, with being in the dream world. Now, what BFG does is he's a dream catcher, right? He literally goes and he captures dreams, and he puts the dreams into the minds of the sleeping humans. This is also very symbolic of the types of things that the gods are able to do, the giants are able to do. You have to remember, these are immortal beings. These are beings that if they were not killed, that they would continue living forever and ever and ever. Legend has it that they could will themselves to leave their bodies at any time that they wanted to. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth also talk about this. Hermes Trismegistus talks about how he was able to just transfer consciousness from one body to another. This is what we would call advanced technology. But the problem is it's not advanced. It's not technology that we are discovering or coming up with. It is technology that we haven't even rediscovered yet. It's still under the label of magic and wonder and mysteriousness, you know. It's advanced and ancient technology that we don't understand today. But the giants had these capabilities. They also have the capability to manipulate the dream world, right? Your thoughts are physical, actual things. They are vibrations. They exist. They're not as, solid as some things are, like this pin, but whenever you start vibrating the pin and the pin moves at a certain frequency, the pin will disappear and essentially become invisible. There are different vibrational states. There are different densities and dimensions to this realm that we live on and to the other realms as well. Can you imagine how much more you would know? All of the knowledge that you would accumulate just by being an immortal. I'm not saying it makes you a moral being. I'm not saying it makes you good or bad. But one thing that I've learned to do is to, when talking about the ancient giants or titans, to give them the respect of being immortal and recognizing that they have had a very, very long time, much longer than humanity has had or any individual human being, to accumulate and learn all of these different things. Some learned at a faster pace, some at a slower pace. Us as human beings, those who are on the path of truth, we try to learn as quickly as we possibly can, right? Because our time is very short in comparison to the immortal beings, right? The giants and the titans and gods of old. And this is what he says in the movie, Sophie basically asks him about his mom and his dad, and he says, giants don't have mothers or fathers. Well, isn't that an interesting thing to say, that giants don't have mothers or fathers? You see, the legends say that the giants, the very first of all of the giants, that they were created, that they came from the titans themselves. The titans didn't walk around having sex with other titans, and it was not the same way that we think about our social life as human beings. Okay, we are much different in our mentality than these beings were. They were constantly focused on things that are pitiful in comparison that we focus on. They didn't care about Facebook feeds and what the new type of trends were or foods or anything. They were the shapers of the world. They were at war, an unimaginable war between wizards and magicians of giants and titans that would blow your mind. That is inconceivable in comparison to pelting each other with little bullets and stuff like that. So that's something that I try to do, is give the titans and the giants the respect of knowing that they are immortals and they have acquired an enormous amount of knowledge along with that. Now, a part of that knowledge is that they could manipulate and learn how to work with these various planes of existence, these different frequency or vibrational states, which is also something that happens when people go to sleep. This giant understands dreams. He works with dreams. He doesn't just say, oh, it's just, random cells firing off in your brains, and you're just reliving random meshed up memories throughout the day. No, they understand what dreams are. And, the further back in time we go, the more we used to respect dreams. Dreams had meaning to them. They had influence on politics and the world at large, and they shaped people's lives. They predicted things. They let you know things about yourself that were going on, and we have completely lost sight of that. We don't teach these types of things in schools anymore. Instead, they're handed to us in the form of fiction and fantasy and movies like this. But the gods of old understood the dream world and the different planes of existence. Welcome to Annalyn, who just subscribed. I hope you got your name right. Oh, and I have a special surprise for Denise, by the way, at the very, very, very end of this show. I hope you're watching. Anyhow, so she's talking to the giant. He says, giants don't have mothers or fathers, you know. Sex was something completely different back then. It was not what we have made it today, right? We have really bashed the whole concept. So she says, how old are you? She asks him, and he says, "I's as old as the earth, I suppose." Now, imagine that statement. He doesn't even keep track of years. You know, he doesn't keep track of how many times the skylight has gone in a circle around us or whatnot, right? He just says, I've always been around. I'm as old as the earth is, you know? Like, I don't understand this concept of, like, dying the way you do. I've always been around. They are immortal. They are the Azir, the Vanir, the vampires, you know? Like, there's a reason why vampires are immortal, you know? And so many of these other beings that are portrayed as living so much longer than humans, the Vulcans, space elves, you know, they outlive humans. The giants and titans lived and had lifespans that were ridiculously long and basically immortal in comparison to the human race. Now, interestingly enough, when the human race first began, when we first hit the scene, all of these legends talk about how at first we also had exceptionally long lifespans. Not immortal lifespans, but there's a reason for that. Think about it. The giants lived for a very long time. The titans lived for a very long time. When we first came onto the scene, we also lived for a very long time, but then some stuff started to happen, right? Maybe it's because we're related, you know? Kiwis flying just subscribed. Welcome, Kiwis. All right, so let's move forward with the slides here. So it talks about, you know, he starts basically showing the dreams that he was giving to one of these kids. Now think about this. Dreams are, I'll help you out. Dreams are partially, right? A small part of it is your brain, your physical brain, your central processing unit, okay? This is your physical computer for your robotic body, your vessel that you inhabit, okay? It's very physical. But the spirit, the energy that's inside of you, right? It essentially may leave the body, but it has a string. It's a soul string. And a part of that stays here so that you don't die, basically, while you're sleeping, right? The soul goes off into another dimension, into the dream world, a sort of a mixed world stopping place between here, the physical, between this other area that's represented by pure information and another area that's represented by pure emotion, right? The dream world is right between all three of those. So yes, you do have some things that come from the computer in your head, right? But the rest of it is you in spirit form acting these things out. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with everybody. That's just a little bit about dreams. So let's get back to the water. You know, he goes up to him. I think that one's actually out of place. Oh, here's another nugget as well. Sophie goes and she covers up the face of the queen, right? She's actually rubbing dust off of the queen, right? But this whole concept of monarchy and somebody being in charge of somebody else, that's not the way that it used to be. The way that it used to be is that we were in charge of ourselves. Each was his own person, you know? You walked about the world wherever you wanted to go. There were no borders. There were no, this is my land, this is your area, or, you know, you can't even have your own land because it's all owned by some corporation that you don't know that's called government. But the way it used to be was each was his own individual. Now, look to the right of Sophie's head and you'll see a picture that was drawn in the background. It's Jack and the beanstalk, right? There's this huge beanstalk shooting up past the clouds. This is another story. This is a myth that is true. It has these grains of truth, these breadcrumbs to it. Like I said, we once lived in a garden paradise. Maybe not a beanstalk, okay? Because an actual beanstalk has to grow on something like a pole or whatnot, right? But there were huge silica pillars that shot up to the skies, giant trees basically, that connected one realm to another realm. They went up past the clouds to where the giants lived, right? Jack, we all know the story. Jack climbed the beanstalk and he went to the land of the giants. Just happens to be that there's a picture right over there of Jack and the beanstalk, while she's covering up the face of the queen, like, hey, boom to the modern world, and let's put up a picture of the way it really is by Jack and the Beanstalk. Okay, so here's another picture of that same area as they're entering into, giant country. And I just wanted to talk about this because BFG comes up with this plan, right? He's going to, remember I said the movie is not talking about the past. The movie references the past, but the movie gives us these clues that says, hey, this is predictive. This is prophetic. We're talking about the future, which, by the way, is really not all that hard to do. If you understand how the law of cycles works, how everything comes back around and everything tends to happen again. And there are signs when certain things are going to happen. It's very simple to do. It's an art that has been lost to us, or really taken away from us because of our conditioning. We have become prisoners in our own world. Anyhow, like I said, it's predictive. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So BFG confronts the Titan, and the Titan says, I's always hungry, because he's like, dude, you don't have to eat the humans. But he's like, I have to, like, I'm starving, They have fallen to a state where they basically didn't want to or couldn't eat the vegetation anymore. It was not sustaining them. So they developed this constant hunger, this constant need to satisfy and gratify themselves because they were literally starving. They were hungry. So they just kept on eating stuff. And they're like, oh, well, sorry, I'm going to eat the human beings. Meanwhile, the gods or the giants, they found other ways to do that. And obviously they didn't have to eat as much, right? So here's an interesting little clip from the movie. Now, off to the right, we've got that same rock formation, which, by the way, if you want to look it up on Google, it's called Drangarnir. Drangarnir. Not sure if I pronounced that correctly. Drangarnir. And this, like I said, is a real place, and it's on its way to the North Pole. It's on its way to Giant Country. Now, check out this helicopter right above me, and look at the hill way off in the background. Look at that mountain just to the right of it, right? Now, this is my imaginative side, and I'm speculating, but there are many of these breadcrumbs that are given to us about the sleeping giants, about the titans that once existed that literally became a part of our geography. Here's another picture, by the way. This is also in China. This is in Yangshuo at a place called Moon Hill. Now, check out this hill in the background, right? There's Moon Hill in the background, and it, interestingly enough, kind of takes the shape of a giant face, right? Let's go ahead and move this back. But, features like this are not created by weather. They're just not. Erosion does happen. Erosion tends to destroy the artifacts that have been left behind in the form of mud fossils and petrification of the ancient world. By the way, the entire ancient world, all of it became rock. For more information on that, see my video called The Stone Age, because I really get into a lot of detail about how the giants, the titans, ancient technology, plants, animals, all turned into rock. And we see the evidence for it everywhere. So moving forward, I drew a little picture there. Okay, so I think this is the last clip that we have. The video sort of fades out, the movie fades out, and it shows we've got this gargoyle here, right? And I talk about the gargoyles from time to time because the gargoyles are an important symbol that we keep around in order to remind us of the eternal curse of the bad guys, the titans and giants that drowned and became solidified, became petrified, turned into stone in that ancient cataclysm. And so what we do in order to ward off evil, we remind it, this is what happens to you if you come across us, right? If you come across the good guys, right? So that's where we get gargoyles from. You know, you can see, I put a picture of it right there. It's got the water pouring out of its mouth. It is eternally cursed to drown. It's a reminder, you have been defeated. You have been drowned in the past. And, you know, it's basically a subtle hint like, don't mess with whoever lives here, basically. It's not because gargoyles are just so scary looking that they scare away the evil creatures. Why would you use an evil creature to scare an evil creature? Evil is not afraid of evil. You know what I mean? But what evil is afraid of is turning into stone and drowning for all of time, right? That's why we have the gargoyles. So BFG wraps up with this symbolism, and there's a lot of other stuff in the movies as well, but these are the main things that I wanted to cover. Last and not least, I think this is last but not least, is I'll show you where Giant Country is. Would you like to know? Okay, well, in the movie, they ask BFG, where are you from? And they put a huge map out on this table, and it starts off, we're going to go slide by slide. This is England, right? With, I believe, Scotland right above it, right? So here's the map, and BFG is going to point out, he traces a little path all the way to the north side of England, and then he skips way up ahead, right? I'll show you the exact path that BFG takes in order to get to Giant Country. He says, it's over here, off of the map, right? This is also important. There are areas that are off of our map. The North Pole is not even on most of any map I've ever seen, really. Antarctica is completely unexplored in an especially strange place, but we're really focusing on the North Pole right now because that's exactly where BFG is telling these people he's from. Let me go ahead and map it out for you. Oh, I'm super in the way. Let's just move this off to the side. So he starts off over here in London, and he drags his finger, he hops over here, he goes to the top. This is his exact route. I took plenty of time to actually compare this to the map. Now, what happens once he gets to Scotland is he jumps over into the next area, and I'll show you where that is. So he jumps from the United Kingdom all the way to this Iceland over here. Now, do you see this marker right here above me over here? This little tag, the little red dot? That's exactly where those strange rock formations that I was showing you earlier, remember with the cliff that's got the sort of hole in the middle? That's where that's located. Drangarnir. That's exactly where that is. It just happens to be on its way in the route that BFG takes in order to get to Giant Country. So he hops over to Iceland, and then his finger makes this curving path. He goes to Greenland, and then way up north, and he says here. And when he says here, it's like way up in the air, basically, right? So he's telling you, right? Whoever made this movie is telling you this is where Giant Country are. There are giants to be found in some sort of an area near or in the North Pole, an area that not many people go to. And, you know, we are conditioned to be afraid of going to either the South Pole or the North Pole, as shown in movies like The Truman Show and things of that nature. But legend has it, at the North Pole, this used to be on maps. You know, the North Pole used to be on maps, and it would show you that there were these sort of four lands that were all together, separated and divided by these four rivers, and at the middle of these four lands was this huge rock and this gigantic sort of lake or sea, right? Now, could it be that traveling through this lake or sea at the North Pole is the same as traveling through the water portals or coming face to face with your reflection in the mirror in order to enter into Wonderland, in order to go through the looking glass, so to speak? One of my favorites is in the Neverending Story. One of the tests that Atreyu has to pass before he gets to the Southern Oracle, which is really interesting, right? Is he has to come face to face with this mirror, basically, that's in this frozen area. And they make a big deal about it. And they say that this test, walking through the mirror, is even more dangerous than the other one, where he was like sprinting between these two sphinxes that had laser beams, eyes, and shooting at him. Walking through the mirror is more dangerous, you know? Anyhow, I'm sort of digressing, but this is a real place. Okay, this used to be known in the world. There was a time when the maps that were all produced and printed and drawn had land at the North Pole, an entire area that just happens to be surrounded by a mountain range, right? If you go back to Moana, you'll notice that before she gets to the land of the giants or the titans, to Te Fiti Island, that entire area is just full of this mountain barrier. I think she even refers to it as like a mountain barrier, right? Anyhow, that's the esoteric hidden truths behind BFG. Now remember, I told you that this movie is not just talking about our past, but it's giving us the clues, basically indicating that many of this is to take place in the future. Giants once existed. They walked our world. Titans existed. They walked our world. They shaped our world. We get so much of who we are and who we strive to be subconsciously from them. They disappeared. Something happened. We are left with the sleeping giants and all of these artifacts all around us that we just take for granted all of the time, that are just evidence of the petrified world left over to us. You see, we just are born into this world. We just look and say, oh yeah, that's just the ocean, or oh yeah, that's just a mountain range, or oh yeah, that's just the Grand Canyon, you know? But we don't get into where did it come from, because our history was stripped away from us. But here's the deal. The movie is saying that the giants are going to return, that the titans will return, that we will see them reemerge one day, because of course they're not gone forever, right? And we will be able to maybe go to a land where there are giants. Maybe the boundaries and the off-limit areas of our world one day soon will be opened up to us, if they're not already, because personally I feel like they are. We just have all of these roadblocks in our mind that keep us away. We really keep ourselves away, you know, by saying, oh, you can't go to that region, you can't go to that area because, you know, there's laws and you'll be arrested, or, you know, the military owns that particular area, or it's just too cold, or the water's too dangerous. You know, these are all things that we have in our minds. These are mental roadblocks. They're literally web form spells that have been cast. Just like when you walk into a spider web, like you don't see that there's anything there, but it has a physical effect on your life. Anyhow, thank you for watching BFG. Also, I want to say thanks for all of the views and subscriptions, all of your positive comments, and everything that everyone has added in order to become a small community, you know. I've got over 20,000 subscriptions to this channel right now. So humbly, I want to say thank you. I appreciate that you guys find something of importance in the things that I share. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the credits. There's a little special credits section at the end of each live stream. You guys have a great night, and thanks for watching.